My name is Ricky Kitay. My mother's name was Terry Kitay. She died 5 years ago on Coolidge Day, the holiest night of the year, after 8 years living with early onset dementia. She was diagnosed when she was 55, and at the time, I was 25. For 5 years during her illness, I kept a diary. It was my way of processing emotions and maintaining my sanity. Some of what I'll share with you tonight are words from that diary. I'm telling my story to share what caring for someone who's going through a profoundly confusing and debilitating illness was like, and to also create a memory and record of that time so that my mother's memory remains alive. The night my mother died, my wife and I were walking home from shul. The sky was bright and clear and the air was crisp. We were taking our time. There was really no need to rush. We were just a few hours into the fast, heading home to sleep to continue fasting the next day. My sister Kerry was over at us babysitting our daughter Ali, who was 2.5 years old. We didn't know it, but Kerry was desperately waiting for us to get home. We made our way up the stairs to the apartment, quietly opening the door so not as to wake Ali, and then we saw Kerry. She told us that the home where our mother was being cared for had been trying to call us, but couldn't get hold of us. Wasn't the first time this had happened, but somehow we all knew that this was different. I wrote. We arrive at the home. I ask the nurse, "How do you know we are at the end?" He tells me, "When you hear the rasping, you will know." Mum is lying in her bed, her eyes are closed and she looks cold. Each breath is very labored, and then I hear it, this deep, gurgling, rasping. We each take a turn to say our final goodbyes. Give Mum a kiss. Mum waited for us to say goodbyes. She waited for us to leave, and then 30 minutes later she died in peace. Knowing we would be okay, knowing that it was her time to go. After 8 years, it was finally over. There was sadness, but also a lot of relief. We felt lucky. Not everyone gets the opportunity to have that moment and have that closure. Had this happened just 4 months later, during COVID, we would not have had that moment. And in the end, I was grateful. Grateful to have said goodbye, grateful that she went in peace, and grateful that my daughter Ali had time to create memories with my mother that she still talks about today. But the story I want to tell you tonight is not about the end. I want to share a few pivotal moments in our journey. What I experienced living at home with my parents during the early parts of the illness, and then the transition from being primary carers to our mother being cared for in a caring facility. It all started with a few moments of forgetting. My mum had this uncanny ability to take the old Gregory's map book, if you can remember, and just direct us through all the dozens of pages to wherever we were going. And she had the most beautiful handwriting. She would write out each step for us, but then suddenly she could no longer direct us. Places she had known for decades became foreign to her. She lost her confidence. She would do my dad's banking. She did it every week and had been doing it for years. Then one day it was too daunting and she didn't know how. And then there was a time she lost her car at the shopping centre. I wrote, I'll be honest, and I hate myself for thinking this, but there are points where I wonder if my mom is being stupid, and I hate myself for the way I reacted, but I lost my temper. I even shouted at her sometimes. How can you not get this? We have been over it time and time again. It is so simple. And then I watch her cry, and she tells herself that she is stupid, but actually it's me who feels so stupid. I just look at her. I feel annoyed by the position she puts me in, like it's her fault that she doesn't get it. Even today, I sometimes reflect on how I reacted then and feel a sense of sadness. It was not her fault that she couldn't understand. It simply was not possible. We needed to help her learn. We needed to learn how to set aside our own frustration and accept what was happening so that we could look after her in the right way. It took a while. We learned that dementia is slow, a long goodbye. We learned this is a serious disease, but not to our mother's intelligence or feelings, just to her memory. There will be other damaging effects, but she is not stupid and she is aware of what is going on. We learned not to treat her like a baby and not to test her. It is better to ask her how her day was rather than what did she do. If you know she spent time with the grandchildren, ask her how it was. And if she can't remember a name or a word, you say it. It's not a test. This was a really hard habit to break at first. I wrote, my dad tells a story of being at work and Mum was trying to knit. He said, I was very busy with patients, but checked in to see how the knitting was going. At one point, I came to see her and there was this burst of tears. She said, I've been trying to cast off and on for the past 3 hours, but I can't remember how to do it. I was so angry hearing the story. Knowing she couldn't do part of the process to allow the joy of knitting really broke me. You see, everything in life is a process. Your brain processes millions of steps. You wake up, you get dressed, you walk, you open the fridge, you find the cutlery, you make breakfast, and so on and so forth. We learned that this disease takes away your brain's ability to process steps. It takes away the things you could once do effortlessly. It started with Mum not being able to drive. Soon it was not being able to dress herself, then cook, and towards the end, walk, recognize us, or even talk. For the first few years, we cared for Mum at home. This involves sticking to routine as much as possible. Each night, Dad and I would write out the next day's activities and go over it with Mum again and again until she felt she understood what was going on. But with all routines, they inevitably change, and managing that change was really hard. We would try and fill her days with activities, but so often she couldn't process what she needed to do. I wrote, Mum came over to my room after Dad and I talked her through the next day's plans. She is visibly upset, confused, and crying. As scary as her degeneration is becoming, I imagine how horrible and hard it must be for Mum being so confused. I explain it again, and as we go through it, Mum starts complaining that she can't read what Dad wrote. Dad deflects and says he writes like a child. Mum is shouting at him, but in a playful way. In the background, Dad mouths to me, Mum wrote it herself, but can't quite read her own handwriting. Dad and I shared in some of the funnier sides of this disease. It was important that we could still laugh with each other even when times were very tough. I remember during the stage being so tired and at breaking point. There was no rest, always something to deal with. I did things I never expected I would have to do. Watching my mum being lost in her own home, dressing her, cleaning her up from the toilet. I felt I was always on edge and could explode. I was so stressed and I couldn't deal with it all. I wrote, the crying is killing me. Dad is looking for solutions to tomorrow's day. Mum cries. I come in and try and sort it out. I leave the room and within 5 minutes I hear her crying again. I want to explode. I know this is wrong to think because she is the one with the disease, but I'm slowly falling apart here. I don't know how Dad hasn't fallen apart. And I know Mum is falling apart because she said it again. And that, not for the first time, she hates her life. And I hate her life too. People would often tell me how good Mum looked. They'd see her out and say, wow, she looked great. Dad was Mum's biggest advocate. He made sure she was always dressed smart, had her hair cut and looked good. So much effort went into creating an environment where Mum could be who she was, even if just her appearance. And we all know appearances can be deceiving. I wrote, Mum became sad again after we finished celebrating her birthday at home with family and some friends. I sat down with Mum. We had a long chat about why she's upset. And this is what she said, verbatim. I feel lost, like a lost person. I loved today and am so upset that reality is back tomorrow. I feel out of control and don't know who I am anymore. I know I have this disease and I don't like what it does to me. I don't want this life. I don't feel strong enough to fight this disease. So often when people are sick, they become an inspiration to others. They embark on new challenges to prove that this disease doesn't define them. My mom never did that. In the early days, I was so frustrated that she didn't. But after that chat, I understood why. She simply couldn't. This disease was too strong and too progressive. Whilst I was sad watching my mum deteriorate, I accepted the cards we were dealt. I tried to get on with it and do what was needed each day. But at the same time, being a carer, partner, brother, son, friend, it was a lot, and sometimes it was too much. My wife encouraged me to go see a psychologist, and it was the best decision we ever made. I learned a lot during this period. It is so important to talk to the people closest to you. Whether it be your friends, partner, family, these people care for you and they don't always know what you're going through and how to help. Talk to them. Tell them what is going on and they'll be there for you. Also in trauma, when things are becoming too much, it can feel dark and scary. I can tell you it is important to talk to someone. It really helps. And when you're pulled in so many directions, you need to find the line in the sand of what you can do and what you're not willing to do. Once you find this line, never cross it. I set the expectations with my family of what I could do for my mom and what I couldn't, and I don't regret that. I just wish that I'd done it earlier. After 3 years of caring for mom at home, we decided as a family that it was time to move her into a care facility. The demands on us were huge. As a family, we separated our time so that she was never alone. It wasn't a light bulb moment that led to the decision, but rather a series of events that made it very clear we could no longer give her the care she needed. I wrote, I arrive at my parents' house to relieve my sister Kerry. Kerry had spent the morning with Mum, and it was now my turn to look after her before Dad would be back from work in the afternoon. There was at most a 5-minute gap between when Kerry left and I arrived. I opened the door and call out for Mum. I look to my left and see her standing aimlessly at the top of 3 stairs with tears rolling down her cheeks. She looks lost. I ask her if she's okay. She says that she was all alone. I comfort her that Kerry was with her and I'm here now. In the space of only 5 minutes, she felt lost and confused in her own home. It was strange to be packing up and shipping off Mum to her new home. We were clearing her cupboards as if she had died, but she hadn't. She was moving as we could no longer care for her. I wrote, Dad calls us later that day. He is about to tell Mum she's moving out. Mum is sad, but there is no screaming or anger. She is confused and cries a little. We arrive at the home and get Mum's room ready. It's big and bright. We fill it with pictures of us, but it's strange. My brother Greg comforts Mum downstairs. Kerry and I go upstairs to talk to Dad. He is stern. There are no emotions. But he is good. I have no emotions. What is going on with me? Why am I not crying? I'm just going through the motions today. Looking back now, the whole moving day was a complete blur. I remember the night we moved Mum. The 4 of us had dinner together. Dad was very emotional, and it must have hit him that he was home alone. He was struggling to talk and holding back his tears. He was speaking about his plans about visiting Mum the next day. We heard from the home that during the night, Mum asked one of the carers to eat dinner with her. She didn't ask any questions of where she was, why she was in a new home, or even where her family was. The carers helped brush her teeth, prompted her to use the toilet, and put her to bed. I wrote, the next morning, I called to speak to Mum. Dad is there and he puts Mum on the phone. The conversation lasts no more than 15 seconds. Mum says hi. That excites me. I ask her how she is. I ask how's the home. There is no response. The phone is silent. Dad tries to put Mum back on, but she can't speak. Later that day, we receive photos of Mum dancing with one of the carers. Seeing her happy is wonderful, but knowing we probably are not going to be part of that is quite sad. Moving Mum lifted a weight off her shoulders. It was like she was now free to be whoever this disease had made her. She was once again the boss of her home, and we were merely the guests. Over the next 5 years, Mum remained in a care facility. As a family, we learned to focus on what she could do rather than what she couldn't. By the end, she was bedbound, unable to walk, talk, or recognize us. We just found positivity in just being around her, spending a little bit of time each week with her. Her home became a place for us to connect as a family, for us to share with each other, and for us to keep making memories. One of my favorite memories of this time was every Sunday, my daughter Ali and I would walk from our apartment to her home. We'd take corn thins and other bits, and Ali would climb onto her Bobber Terry and eat breakfast with her, try to feed her some corn thins and sort of pull and play with her cheeks. We didn't stay there very long, but it's a memory I'll never forget, and one that Ali still remembers to this day. But as I reflect on these years, what really strikes me is the difficulty in remembering what my mom looked like before the diagnosis. Sometimes I can't even remember exactly who she was or what she did. The toll this disease took on our memories is massive. But recently, very ordinary moments have sparked memories of Mom from a long time ago, whether playing Lego with my kids, scratching their back, holding their hands, or watching them swim, have brought back memories of the joy I had with my mom doing the same thing. And I know that over time, as the memory of this trauma fades, more memories of my mom will come back to me, and I'll remember who she was. And this is who she was. My mom was kind and the heart and soul of the family. She was selfless, a volunteer, a giver, and she spent her early years looking after children with disabilities. She had a rebellious streak to her. She loved my dad and loved each of us. She was so proud of her family and her Jewish heritage. She would have loved watching her grandchildren grow up. She was an Eishe Chayil, someone who will always be in our lives and never be forgotten. Thank you for listening.